Just to explain my involvement, I'm with the company. We do public financial management, government financial systems. Primary focus is in developing countries. What people call East Timor, but it's officially Timor-Leste, happens to be one of our customers. But I'm just going to talk about them. That's it. If you want to know more about me. So I must admit to being somewhat confused, because here I am living in the United States, discovering that Congress is there to cut transparency because it's too expensive, it's too much of luxury, and yet if we look at this little country, little Timor-Leste, when you look at all the comparables like GDP per capita, people below the poverty line, the only thing you see that Timor's got on the U.S. is GDP growth is faster. But of course, if you start really low, it's kind of not that difficult to increase. So you wonder, what the heck? Why would the government of Timor-Leste actually want to encourage government transparency? Because that seems counterintuitive for most people, the narrative of developing countries. Well, part of it is because globalization is really creating a competition among countries. Businesses have choice of where they do business. Donors have a choice of where they put their money. At the same time, that despite what people try to do, citizens are watching, and they're quite empowered through technology. So the government of Timor-Leste, that's in Portuguese, RDTL, started with the Transparency Initiative. What they're trying to do is this. They're a young country, post-conflict. They're not the most recent country. Kosovo is the most recent country. The next country will be Southern Sudan. All of those are our customers. What? So they actually want to build civil society and empower journalists. They want to build infrastructure. They want to build capacity in education. They want to get citizens involved more in government, and they want to improve government performance. So that all sounds like crazy talk, doesn't it? But here's the thing. There is a statistical connection between governance and prosperity. And transparency is usually a part of government effectiveness. It's a part of voice of accountability. It's part of control of corruption significantly. And so there is that connection. And so the government...
I'm sorry.
This is the World Bank has it's a World Governance Indicators, and they have 6 of these indicators, and these indicators come from third-party sources that are aggregated, and you see the line, you see they show confidence level depending on the number of different indicators about corruption. So transparency is actually just one of those indicators. And if, for example, a country, they don't happen to have an indicator like they're followed a lot, then there's stretch further. So a country like Kosovo, for example, which is not recognized by some countries, has a much broader, because they've only got like 5 information sources out of a possible 25. And this is something that's been going on since '98. They do it on an annual basis. So what Timor's trying to do is they figure using transparency with governance, they'll end up with a more stable country. They'll get investor confidence and also donor confidence. But most importantly, they'll avoid the transparency or the resource curse. You may be aware of this, but developing countries with a very good resource base, a country like Nigeria or Angola, tends to have much poor governance, much higher corruption. And Timor has oil in the Timor Sea. There's a bit of a dispute with Australia, but there is a royalty system that's in operation, which essentially represents somewhere in the neighborhood of 60% of their income, which is significant. And so what they wanted to do was a technology leapfrog. And what does that mean? That means, first of all, use what works by looking around what's going on in other countries. Then skip what doesn't work and skip over the stages that other countries have had to go through. They don't have to go through. So essentially, it's a question of modernizing much quicker to developed countries. And this is their vision. This is their slide. Timor uses the American dollar as their national currency. And they're doing it kind of holistically through multiple stages. And it's really part of their entire public financial management reform, which involves all sorts of back office systems, civil service capacity building, all sorts of things that you would that they need. But this, I'm just talking about the transparency side. And there's basically 5 stages that they're going through. The first is supporting international standards. And the reason for that is that really allows comparability between what they're doing and other countries are doing. It's one of the most difficult things for developed countries because the financial standards used in, let's say, the United States, Britain, Canada, Italy are different. And so the first one they're supporting is what's called the International Public Sector Accounting Standards. You may have heard of IFRS for private sector. This is the public sector version of reporting on a standard basis. They are supporting the IATI standard, which means that all information coming to them from the extractive industries are made public. They're supporting IMF standard called Government Financial Statistics, so you can compare their data with data from other countries. They're supporting something called medium-term expenditure frameworks, which means 3-year budget planning and providing this information publicly. And they're about to support the International Aid Transparency Initiative, which means showing aid flows going through their country from donors. There's sort of 2 parts. The donors themselves have to publish that information, and recipient countries and NGOs have to do that. They're going to do this later this year.
Can I ask you about this? So is
sure,
this,
you can ask me everything.
What's your credit card number? No. So donors have to comply with this particular donation standard, and then countries have to, in a reciprocal fashion, publish all of their spending data of
the spending. They have to follow the donor money. So if a donor were to give the government of Timor-Leste money within directly to their budget, then their disbursements, actually what they spent, would then be published back in this XML standard.
Okay.
And so you would be able to follow the money from, let's say, the World Bank through, it was given directly to their budget and where it went to geographically, where the money was spent, what type of programs, how it was spent. And similarly, NGOs can sign up for this. The Gates Foundation signed up for it, and the Hewlett Foundation, and they will publish back to that. So you can actually follow the money from inception to actual result. Okay. This is the standard.
And do any of these standards have corollary, like real-time access feeds?
IATI, the donor community has been fighting against monthly. They want to go quarterly or annually. But a lot of the developing countries want to have these monthly unaudited data, right? Put it out before it's audited. IATI, I think, is also kind of monthly and so on. These GFS and IPSIS and so on, that's also periodic. So none of this is real time.
And sorry, is there a listing of who are the major software vendors that produce these types of systems, or systems that are compatible with these? Or is that something that's just
no? So for IPSIS and GFS and MTF, there's no compliance methodology. But if you wanted a vendor, for example, you put 3 balances, that's a spreadsheet. In terms of IATI, that's more of consolidation of various sources. IATI, there's only one vendor I know in the financial management sector that does us, but Development Gateway does for a management platform, and a company called Synergy will also do it for aid management as well. But you will find all the links at the wiki, so you can look into it. So the next thing that they wanted to do was improve by having performance management structure within the government. Now, let me caution you here for a second and say, does this sound kind of realistic? Because this is a post-conflict country with significant low literacy, and yet there they are, with presented at the ministry level, at the managerial level, showing their what's called budget execution data, because one of their biggest problems is they don't spend their entire budget, which is a bad thing when you're building schools and roads and you're underdeveloped. But also there are other parts where they're connected directly with macroeconomic data. This is real time. There's real time accounting. Third initiative is by putting together a document management, records management system. And this is forming the repository for freedom of information. And this is where all the correspondence going on external with third parties coming through the Office of the Minister, Aid Effectiveness Group, and so on is all managed and will be able to be presented freedom of information. Next one is the e-procurement portal. This goes live in August 15th. It's quite similar to what a few people have presented from other countries, but essentially provides where all government tenders are published, unlike the Latvian one, it's published in Portuguese, Italian, and English, 3 languages. All opportunities over, I think it's $50,000, could be $20,000. Vendors can sign up for alerts, so if you're a vendor of something, then you can be alerted about this stuff. And all the tender results will be published. It comes through. And civil society will be trained so they can go through and understand the data.
Civil society?
Civil society, NGOs, journalists, etc. In Timor are being trained on how to use this.
Excuse me, what kind of results? What are the
Means who won the tender, at what amount. And so then you would be able to go in and do a search, for example, on a particular, let's say, company, where have they won, is it a certain purchasing area that they're always, is there something funny? Essentially, it brings forward thousands of untrained auditors, because a developing nation government at this particular stage doesn't have internal audit effective, doesn't have lots of people to fight, doesn't have anti-corruption agents. Why would we need some of those things? Let's get everybody involved directly.
Who pays for that literacy and kind of the connections to the internet and computers and all?
Well, the government is paying for the training. In terms of digital divide, there's a lot of donors providing money for civil society in this team. So there's a lot of that going on. The biggest problem, which you'll see in the transparency portal, is Timor is connected externally with 10 megabits. That's it. So, but one of the things they've done, which went live on March 15th, is their transparency portal. This allows anybody to drill into 10 years of budget data. This means what the budget was originally designed to be, all the budget transfers that fiscal year, and all the actual results. By revenue, by expenditures, by budget, by organization structure, by geographic structure, by purpose structure. And you can output this information once you find it in RTF, Word, Excel, XML. It's just extremely slow coming external to Timor. And it's really all about government leadership. And they actually have a slogan called Goodbye Conflict, Cooperative Development. And this has been the primary driver for this. And the Minister of Finance herself has been extremely effective at pushing this quite rapidly, despite reluctance on the part of the international community. So, no, you're moving too fast, you're doing this too quick. So now if we were to compare this with what we have in the United States. The United States federal government does not support any of these standards. Does not support international public sector accounting standards, either cash basis or accrual basis. And it should be noted, the U.S. government is not running on an accrual basis. So if you were to look at the accounts of what the deficit is, that is not anywhere near correct. If it was a private organization that had to do accrual accounting, they'd have to show the net present value of the entitlements. The United States does not present what the extractive industries are providing in terms of taxes. The State Department and the USAID are not supporting IATI at this moment in time. And And as you're probably aware, the United States runs a single year budget, does not do multiple year budget viewpoint, it does things. Most of these things like performance management, document management, e-procurement, and transparency is done differently across different departments and agencies. FedBizOps does not provide a single source for every possible procurement over a certain amount. It just has lots of them. And right now, where Timor is providing a lot of data for, a lot of funding for the transparency portal, we're seeing a movement afoot for underfunding in the United States. So one could make the argument that at some point in the future, perhaps by 2012, we may actually see a situation where the government of Timor-Leste has more effective open data than the United States. And that's not entirely because it's something bad with the United States. It's because, of course, things have evolved over time, and they've just jumped right into it. They don't have a problem of consolidating data across all government departments and agencies. They started in 2002. They installed the financial management system. It covers the entire country. They can show you 10 years of data, and we can't do that in the United States. This is the site, and it is very slow, but especially when it's during the day over there. You see
It
that
was like a 10 megabit connection for the whole country.
exactly.
That's wild.
So we have, we're the provider of the financial system and a number of other things, and our people tend to be Skyping and emailing us in the middle of the night their time, which is the daytime in the U.S. And suspected it is going to be really slow. Okay? Fortunately, if we didn't learn anything with Amazon, it's always good to have an backup. That's my mouse. I just did some screen captures in the beta version that we were fiddling with, so that data's more fun. I can only get it up in the screen.
What type of digital civil society constituencies have developed in Timor-Leste? Like, app developers or?
None. Really, the constituency for this kind of work tends to be expatriates, some of whom still live in Australia. And it's often in international NGOs that are doing this kind of work external and then bringing it there. But the primary focus of things like journalists, bloggers, is a few active bloggers and other people as well. But they're actually trying to create this, right? They're trying their best to create incentives for this. So before this was even brought forward, when the idea came out, they brought us to help them to show what this might look like. And we had sessions with Parliament, sessions with the President's office, Prime Minister's office, with civil society, like 6 hours to explain how this would work. And then the rollout, which happened on the 15th, had that same kind of 2-day rolling thunder, explaining everything to everyone, training people, showing them. This is just the video, so you can see I'm just sort of clicking through randomly at different categories and outputting it to Excel or whatever I want to. So it still isn't at that full web services availability yet, but I mean it's not like people in Timor know how to use web services.
Right. Are there university courses that are in curriculum being developed within education?
65% literacy, and they have a language problem. The language problem is this: there are 3 official languages: Portuguese, English, Hadden, which is like a Creole Portuguese, and hardly anybody speaks any of those 3 languages. Almost everybody speaks, there's an Indonesian language, and almost everybody speaks that, but you can't make it an official language because they were, so you can't speak it, you can't present it, so you've got all sorts of issues that you just don't have anywhere else. And so they're trying to get focus in on the highly educated Timorese and try to get them involved and trying to raise everybody up at the same time.
Empowering the empowered to then hopefully empower
And teaching Portuguese and English in primary school to get it all the way through. So you tend to have people who speak Portuguese and English tend to be older people when they're very young, about in between. You know, they're sort of bringing this piece forward. So it's a huge capacity building exercise. So in their underlying kind of public financial management reform, required all of this happening within the government themselves to raise their capacity.
What was your role in this?
We did the software. The underlying financial management software, that we did a lot of the capacity building. We did a lot of the building of the dashboards and all of this sort of stuff.
And your code is open sourced, right, or no?
We build on an open source platform.
Okay.
The actual financial software is proprietary, unless the customer wants us to build custom developed. But the data is open. This, on the other hand, they happen to have SharePoint, so it had to all work on the Microsoft platform. Despite the fact we don't like that, they demanded it. We said, well, you know, there you go. So this is just showing what managers see in the government. This is just one of the dashboards. There's sectoral specific ones. So you like a health one, education one. So then there's just the basic financial management side of things. We normally build on JasperSoft. So our software outputs in the open source version of Jasper. If they want all the bells and whistles, we have a good deal with Jasper so that they get a commercial version of the OLAP tool. All of the documentation, I might have mentioned this before, we don't use regular help, everything's in Drupal. So it means that when they go from help to documentation, it's all in Drupal, and then their own documentation, courseware, and e-learning is all attached within Drupal. When we upgrade to another version, it doesn't affect their side. They can continue. It's part of their capacity building process. And it's been kind of a fight because the international community, you have lots of people who are working based on donor contracts, and they don't want to build sustainability, build government self-reliance. We're a software company, so if we have a large professional services component, we don't look so good at evaluation, so we just push methods to be more sustainable. It's a completely different kind of business model. And so this is why I'm afraid to say I haven't seen too many people in developed countries that managers that have this level of capability in their system.
Are they able to use the information? I mean, you're providing them all this information, but even at the government level, are they?
We trained them, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
why wouldn't they use it?
training someone and then being able to use it, they're not necessarily the same. I mean, are you really seeing like uptake and all of that?
We're seeing a lot of uptake in the Ministry of Finance and the people who manage the Sovereign Wealth Fund, particular significant ones. The uptake, there's a huge disparity in terms of capacity within departments within the government. So it's in the developing country, the way that you normally do this is our market, is you focus in on the organizations with the greatest capacity. You build, you adapt to make it work, and then you start to extend the capacity across different levels of government. It's kind of easy 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
But you're right, if we went to in the health sector, the education sector, it's not being used anywhere near as much. But you need leadership in
And success stories.
success stories. What's quick wins? You know, one of the things that distinguishes the way that we work versus, let's say, a ERP company, is they tend to work at big bang approaches with huge, massive systems, and we just go one step at a time. Here, change, adapt, build capacity, and so on. So it's but while we're on the subject of developing countries, you've probably heard all about corruption in Afghanistan. It's probably a normal, and people talked about that. Almost all of it is what we call off budget. In other words, it's money the government of Afghanistan does not hit the government of Afghanistan's budget. So these billions of dollars that are coming into banks out of Afghanistan, that is all money that has gone through various donors, Department of Defense, given this cash to do things. The actual government of Afghanistan system is fully auditable. It's rolled out. It's been decentralized to every staff, and it's every province across the country. And they're in position to be able to do this, which we probably will see in the next 2 years. We've also hired local people in Timor, so we have that as maintaining that kind of capacity building. And we do have a group of people right now working on this next stage who are all from Guatemala. So it's kind of, you know, people who've gone through this, teaching people just about anything.
Do you find that you redesign your offerings much when you train people that it's not meant to be a commentary on your organization or your consulting, but more just like the actual implementation of these kind of fresh new people receiving this information?
Well, absolutely. My viewpoint is that the traditional way in which software is sold is not so-called enterprise software to governments, is somewhat dysfunctional here and completely the wrong way in developing countries, because typically the software vendor would have no idea what's going on because there's always a third party handling and trying to customize and build stuff. So we're different in that our processes go right through to implementation. We're involved in every implementation. Whenever we haven't been, it's been a bit of a disaster. So we always get this feedback loop. So the people who are actually in Timor helping them do this actually write specifications for the next release of the product. So it goes direct, closed loop, comes around. We also don't have a user group, we have a steering committee. Every year we fly people in from our international customers to one location was in Madeira this year, which was kind of nice. And they go through our roadmap and change it for us. We don't tell them when things are going to happen, they tell us. So one of the things to be successful in this particular market, in our view, is that you actually have to not only adjust your product to suit the market, but to adjust your entire business model. That's my commercial. Other governments that we are providing for, other than Afghanistan, which I mentioned. So we have a few customers here in the States, and we have 50 in Canada, but we have the governments of Antigua, Guyana, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Uganda.
What kind of
Kosovo.
cultural issues and adoption issues do you have, and what do you think are like messages for, you know, as you're going through different countries and different stages of
the number
where
one,
they are at,
the first thing is
the
to
best
be from a
information?
multicultural country, which we are, which helps. Is to hire people from all these different countries so you get the cultural aspect. So that it's actually quite positive to bring people from Guatemala to Timor rather than people from Australia to Timor. Right? So in the cultural issues, there's significant cross-cultural issues, no question about it. And these often deal with methods of communication. People can sometimes they go around the bush, they're not very direct, sometimes they're overly direct. You know, the way you communicate at different levels, it's different. Like in Uganda, for example, our project leader there from Canada, if she touches the computer during a demo, the woman from Uganda gets it. You can't be shown to be touching the computer because then they won't respect it. Other people have to learn the computer. So in Uganda, we know certain things have to work different way. One is some of the people one of my people who works for me says, you know, in India they really want white people to come because they love that white level. They love to hear the white voices talk. It's just the cultural meeting.
So what kind of like what in terms of what kinds of, you know, you're talking about these people leapfrogging, which I find very exciting. But like, what are the things? What are the not the takeaways, but the takebacks? You know, like how does what you're learning in these kind of fresher environments, what can you bring back in terms of the kludgier environments where we have more established and
yeah, because sometimes that's what's in the way, right? You've got more established processes and so on. So often in a post-conflict country, because infrastructure is destroyed or there's no kind of system in place, it's often easier to get something in there because there isn't something in the way, like there's the already set, established organizations trying to do something in their way. So that tends to be one thing. Change is always difficult in any of these situations, but where you get a country that had an established system, let's say Mongolia, the problem, the number one thing to do was to get them out of Mongolia. And when they were asking things like, well, why is it a bad thing to pay people in cash? What could possibly be wrong with that idea? So, with the World Bank's help, we took a core group of 12 of them and we flew them to Canada and trained them there, outside their particular, so that they would understand it. And not 2 people, not 5 people, but 12 people, because you know there's going to be turnover. And that created a core group of people who understood what was going on, and slowly that's what set up that lot of change. The other thing is that you have to, certain things you just have to implement it so fast to do something that's minor so somebody can point it quickly.
So someone can what?
Somebody can point and say, look what we did in 2 months, which is in our business, it's very difficult to do something in 2 months. We went in '99 in Kosovo and we implemented the first stage of their financial system in 26 days. So we're printing checks in 26 days. And since then, it's been many years after that, there's been a significant amount of change, but it's always been because of the previous thing. Every year they were able to show something.
Hi there. I'm just giving you guys a 10-minute warning. We're going to try to wrap up today at 5 p.m. And just want to let you know we're going to have a happy hour in Chinatown at 6 o'clock, beginning at 6 at Rocket Bar. So you just take the red line down to Gallery Place Chinatown. It'll be across the street. Okay, thanks.
Or is there going to be like a closing wrap-up session?
There's no closing wrap-up session today. We start again tomorrow morning at 10
Can you
a.m.
take my picture so I can prove
on floor number 5.
to people that I was working on Saturday because they don't offer which
Well, how is this proof?
I'll
I need some T-shirts or something, you know.
Well, it's actually,
You got the,
it's actually
Shall we all just be looking
yeah,
around?
very
at the
thoughtfully,
computer?
like, you know.
Here, let's see, we got the people, we got.
I got to put it in our newsletter. There you go.
Oh.
Remember, we're the ones that did the Mongolian Drupal.
Yeah, I know. I've been meaning to follow up on that. What type of gender balance or imbalance situations have you encountered?
Well, I'll tell you the best one.
Okay.
In Afghanistan, when the system was first set up, the feeling was in the government that this wasn't important, and so there was a vast number of women who were the first users of the system. And afterwards, this is just a financial management system. Then afterwards, when people realized this was the thing to do, all of a sudden women disappeared and they got replaced by men. This has changed since then because one of the biggest problems is that when the government doesn't take control. So the government of Afghanistan themselves, under the Treasury Director, they've trained over 600 people themselves without any foreign help, and rolled out our software to all the established, all the provinces, as of January 2010. So you've heard of some of Nuristan, Kandahar. They're all running financial management with our software, rolled out by them, not by us.
Okay.
So that means that's pretty sustainable if they can do that. And that's by training, and then they train women, and they brought in gender equality after that. Minister of Finance for Timor is a woman, so that has created some level of gender balance.
Just one woman?
As a Minister of Finance. It's only Minister of Finance and our customers, I think, that is a woman.
Okay. Because I'm just intrigued when I hear that when women are trained on technology or in certain types of technology, there tends to be a much broader acceptance, just like when women tend to be literate in a number of different functional elements of society, you tend to see a broader adoption of those tools, and it also just tends to sustain itself a little bit.
An interesting observation with the Caribbean, because I was at a conference a couple of years ago for financial government financial management, that everyone that was there, the accountant general,
Hey, 10-minute warning, everybody.
We're
We
women,
got a 10-minute
every
warning a
single
while
one.
ago.
Oh,
Except
all right. Wait.
7-minute warning.
Who
Oh, really?
was
Okay.
not- who was
7-minute warning.
And
I'll
everybody
figure it
in
out.
IT were men at this conference. 100% of them. So this is from all the Caribbean islands, 30 countries.
Are you finding with these, especially with the post-conflict countries, and are you finding people wanting more of integration with mobile in terms of their activities and applications or data gathering, or?
No, actually not.
Really?
We're pushing for it. And the only country that has really got looking for mobile is Timor, and we've got a thing just like things like workflow and procurement, like to tell you that your stuff has arrived and stuff like this. But no, there isn't a real push in government for that yet, and we're quite surprised about it. Also, we've been pushing cloud computing, but they just look at us as they don't want anything to do with that. Like we wanted to put all that Timor site on some third-party system so that it would be accessible to everyone. No, they don't want. So you can go and you can basically get all the data off the system yourself, right? By scrolling through and outputting it. But no, they don't actually want it to be hosted elsewhere where everyone can. So it's a bit of a conceptual problem about owning financial data. Same with procurement information. That procurement stuff should be hosted externally, place like
Outside of Timor?
Right, where there's more than 10 megabit per second connection.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, that's where ideas come up for me. Is just like how do you get that data then peered in the way that it would be in a neutral, trusted site, like whether it would be the World Bank or WEF or the UN or some other function of the UN.
There's one of the best one is Development Gateway, who used to be part of the World Bank offshoot. They're an NGO here in Washington, and they have a e-procurement site that runs the standard methodology that one can post, but they actually do stuff where they take procurement information from countries, have people in India disassemble it to put it up online, and they have a translation of the brief. The last time was 19 languages that they'll translate automatically. So this, for countries that actually want to open their systems up, their procurement to competition, which is good for WTO rules and EU rules and stuff like this, that they can do so with having relatively enough information so you can tell what the procurement is about. Then when you click the button and drilling in and getting it, it could be whatever. You might have to physically go to that country with cash to get it, or you might be able to download it or whatever. It doesn't matter. As long as you can online. So that's one of the best ones. And they have an API and everything. You can just exploit it if you wanted to. So that's what we would do at the point at which a procurement opportunity came through. We just use a web service through the system. And then the link, after somebody wanted it, would then come back to the Timor site, unless Timor would then want to also allow that information to be posted in DC.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So what do you see coming down, from what you've learned, what do you see coming down the pike for the U.S.? I mean, this was very interesting, and I very much appreciate it. And I also want, what do we get?
What do you guys? Well, see, that's
What does the U.S. get?
I have to
We get a lot of laws that say that we are supposed to do this, and then a lot of regulatory sclerosis.
Regulatory sclerosis.
Well, I think the thing is, and this comes from a foreign perspective. I think that the American political system has a lot of disincentives for this kind of transparency. You have a situation where the individual member, senator, or House of Representatives has a significant disincentive to want to go towards full transparency and looking at outcomes. And they yield a lot of power relative to the executive branch for budget and so on that you wouldn't get in a lot of other countries. The president has no control even over the Democratic Party, except if like the current president, unless his popularity is really high and they want to move him along. Whereas in Canada, for example, if you don't vote for the government, if you're a member of the Conservative Party, you don't vote for the government, then the government falls, which is what happened. Right? There's an election on Monday, on the budget specifically. So I think that that's a bit of a problem. And a lot of the laws with respect to how much private business can affect politics here is so significant, so overwhelming. And I think also from a cultural perspective, it tends to be a not invented here attitude about a lot of things. So one doesn't tend to learn about what works and what doesn't work in other countries, which is really terrible. So in all my life,
say that again. A non-invented.
Not invented here. So if it's something that comes from another country, it can't be good. It can't be good, right?
Wasn't invented here.
Wasn't invented here, right? Healthcare, actual healthcare wouldn't work. Yeah, freedom fries. French fries were invented in Belgium, so they should have come from Belgium. So, until recently, I only remember one point when the Canadian dollar was above the American dollar. Now it's considerably above. I don't remember until the financial crisis where unemployment in Canada was lower. Because it makes no sense that it should be lower because of the economics of the country. But we're really seeing a situation where it is just not, it's very discouraging in terms of the debate in the United States. Because when you come from another country, there's all this polarization between what we would consider two parties that are really extremely close to each other in the political spectrum compared to other countries, arguing about things at the point where it becomes almost nonsense. And the amount of political noise because of cable news, because of all sorts of other things. And you can't really grasp the data, right? The information you can use. And when you could, they're trying to undermine it. And it's very disappointing. Losing the leadership position the United States used to have it. So, and data.gov and recovery.gov and all these sorts of things are really leadership positions that the United States has that they've given up.